Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to my LinkedIn Live show, really focusing on how do we show up in real tactical ways to lead with heart. And today I'm excited. I invited someone who is a podcast guest, someone who also will show up inside of my new book, The Art of Caring Leadership, Dr. Renata T. Robinson. And the reason why I invited her on is I remember seeing her um, at a conference speak, and I saw how interactive she was, and she was talking about diversity and inclusion issues with people, and she was she felt inclusive, and she felt like she was teaching from the heart, and it's just somebody I needed to have in my circle. And so I want to introduce you guys to hello, welcome there, Dr.
Hi.
Robinson. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm so excited to see your beautiful smiling face on here, and excited to continue the relationship between the podcast and the book. And now you're here with me, and the more things that we'll be doing to just shed light on a lot of things in this world, together. So I'm excited. And so this one today, I wanted to bring you on and for us to have a conversation, and an open and honest conversation about, actually, on that topic of how do we have like the tough conversations at work. There's just a lot of fear right now, especially about having these types of conversations, whether it's anything related to working remotely and not knowing how to measure performance while they're at home, and what's too much when it comes to goal setting, and what's not enough when it comes to goal setting now in this current environment. How hard is it or easy is it to talk about issues of race right now with the current climate that we're in? And so I just think it's a good conversation for us to have. And I think even more important for two people that look like us to have, and to teach from the heart. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, definitely a topic that's challenging, I'd say today, more than other days. Tough conversations are always hard because there's a lot of things that go into those conversations, emotions, your impact, how you feel. You already feel not validated, or people have offended you. And like, where do you go from there? And then who do you have a conversation with? And also think power plays a dynamic in those tough conversations. So if you're a leader, it's kind of easy to have a conversation with your employee and have that challenging conversation because of the power dynamics. You're the leader. So you can obviously say what you need to say. But if it's the employee to leader, that can be challenging, or peer to peer, or, depending on what that looks like. So I think those conversations have to be timely, but you have to think about all those factors that go into those conversations.
Yeah, that's interesting. That power dynamic it's real. It is real. But interestingly enough, like I think even on the topics of race, but not even just race, anything related to like right now, where they're like, managers, or there's a lot of discomfort, whether they have the power or not. They don't really know how to use it right now. They're
Right.
super nervous, is what I'm finding and hearing, is they're really nervous on, for example, remote work, or the goals or the performance review standards that were in place pre-coronavirus. Now they're in the midst of this, and there's all this change, and there's all this uncertainty, and now they're like, do we still keep the same measurements? Do we still have the same goals? How do I talk to my people about that? How do I hold them responsible as they're working from home with their children crowded around them? So those are some of the questions. And on the racial front, it's like, I'm a white male. How do I have this conversation with my employees without being offensive, disturbing any HR rules, but at the same time showing empathy? These are all these questions that are brewing. And so
Right.
some of this, it's actually interesting because this time has become almost like an equalizer,
Yeah.
where everybody's in uncertain times. And so that our roles, some of that power dynamics is kind of shifted. I don't know if that'll obviously stay that way, but right now it's all muddled, really muddled.
It is. No, and I think you bring up some really good points. Like, how do I have this conversation? And I think really the key is being transparent and honest, and also saying what you know and what you don't know. And when you're talking about race, it's really important to enter that conversation, especially talking to a person of color. If you are not a person of color and you haven't had those experiences, being honest and saying, you know what, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what to say. Can you help me, on this journey to understand? I'm here. I want to know more. Help me. And sometimes those are the best ways to have those conversations. But I think there's a lot of things that happen that create uncertainty that they don't even understand might have happened, like a microaggression or things of that nature might take place where a person of color is offended. And I think also on the flip side, as a person of color, how do you have those conversations and really navigate relationship versus winning? And I think sometimes people want to win a conversation versus actually build a relationship and have an outcome where you both grow together and respect each other on this journey. And I look at it as a journey. It is a journey.
And that's powerful, because I do think that often, not, people are in leadership roles, people are not, it doesn't really matter, just in human interactions, we place winning on top of maintaining and building relationships, and that is really quite critical. I think it's the crux of the employer-employee relationship, of the leader and team member relationship, right? Is that what are we placing above that relationship? What is that priority that we're placing above that? Because when we do that, those people that we're looking to for support and loyalty may not be there if you are prioritizing in the wrong way. Like,
Sure.
for example, projects, or getting that next promotion, or again, winning, and always looking to be right in that, and they see that that's where you're at, then they're going to probably be less likely to want to stick with you, because they want people who are there that shows, true care, concern, love, empathy, listening. They want to know that deep down, and not from a fake convenient side of things, right?
Right, exactly. Or a checkbox. And I think that happens sometimes in organizations. And when you're talking about DEI work, diversity, equity, inclusion, it's like, well, tell me how I can get the checkbox. Like, what do I need to do to make sure people know that I care? And it's like, no, caring is actually caring. And what does that look like? You have real conversations. One thing I love about my organization is, it is an organization about social justice. So we are very aware of the systems that have caused injustice to where people are experiencing homelessness, and a majority of those people are people of color, when our whole country, there's less of us than there are white people. So what does that look like? How do we shift those changes? We have real conversations. We're like focused in this work daily. We have huddles, conversations. We're trying to change systems. We're trying to create space. We've already went through and made sure from a compensation lens that we're paying people the way they need to be paid. And so it takes work, not conversation. And if there's no work, then there's no trust. If there's no trust, then there's no change.
Ooh, that gave me the chills. I geek out on this kind of stuff, and it is so true. Thinking about, so the organization you work for is
Colorado Coalition for the Homeless.
Yes, for the homeless.
Yeah.
And boy, I mean, really, they're in that, the customers, the quote unquote customers that you serve, and then the people who serve them. I remember on our podcast episode how you kind of went over some of there's just such a level of complexity involved, where some of the people that are working there also are facing issues of poverty, also are, just having a lot of different issues on their own. And then they're having to then go serve a population that is in so many ways underserved, in the community as a whole, and are not able to, they're having to figure out how they grapple at the same time while they help others grapple with their current circumstances. And how do they help overcome that? And very so complicated. And so when you layer on coronavirus, remote work, and then you layer on the racial injustices that, by the way, have been going on for decades, but just again, but continue to be heightened and highlighted.
Right.
Then you've increased the level of complication, and then you're the leading human resources for that organization, and having to face that. So, I mean, what are some of your biggest challenges in that regard when we're talking about because now those conversations are happening? They already happened for you and for many of us, but for you in particular, working in the homeless organization, the social justice organization. But what does it look like now? What are some of the real complicated things that you're seeing now?
Well, I think I love how you said shedding a light. I think it's the spotlight, right? So things have been recorded. We have cameras, we have technology that are bringing things to light that we have dealt with our whole life, And so I think right now what's happening is, when things are happening, people are not being silent anymore. And I think there was a space where we would sit in our bubbles and just go to work and do what we're supposed to do. And no one's going to challenge anything. You're just going to go with what it is. You're going to code switch. You're going to do all those things when you show up at work, and you are going to just fit the bill and do what you got to do. Well, that's not happening anymore. People are tired. And because they're tired, they're saying things, and things are being said. And I think where I come into play leading HR is I'm trying to help navigate those conversations. Like, how do you have these tough conversations with respect? Because ultimately, people want to be respected, whether you're at work, home, or anywhere in life, you want to be respected. But how do you have these conversations to bring awareness, peel back those layers, and actually get an aha moment? And I know you and I have had conversations just because we've worked, we're working together, we're talking about what's happening on our journey, and we've had microaggressions that we've dealt with. I mean, I'm sure you can talk about some of yours. I mean, I've heard people say they must be handing out doctoral degrees. And I'm like, wow, ouch, that hurts. Or, you articulate well. Or, can I touch your hair? Or, things of that nature. And these are my personal experiences. And I'm not going to speak for the whole Black community because I can only speak for me. And so that's also another thing that you have to talk about when you talk about this work is, what offends you, or what are things that cause you to have a tough conversation, and what makes that hard for you? Because it may not be hard for someone else. Somebody might be fine with someone saying you articulate well, or they're handing out degrees or things of that nature. But for me personally, there's some layers to that. And so what I like to share, if you will, is an example of like what that journey looks like to have that tough conversation with the person.
Mm.
And how do you have that conversation? So
That'd
I'd
be
like
great.
to share that if I will.
Yes.
Okay. So I think it's important to have timely conversations. And so you may not be skilled to have that conversation in that moment. So someone says, Heather, you don't articulate well. You may be offended. You may be hurt. Your emotions might, your tone might be there. If you're me, I've got a temper. So I know sometimes I have to pause and not respond that moment. And I have to walk away. And then I have to think about, how did that make me feel? Why did that make me feel this way? Like when I think about that statement personally, when I think about you articulate well, how that's making me feel is that you expected me not to. I'm assuming that you expected me not to. And it's assumption. I'm going to call that out in this moment. I'm assuming that you think that I shouldn't articulate well by making that statement. I'm assuming that this is the reason, but why is Dr. Robinson assuming that in this moment? Well, history plays something in that. Historically, people of color are not looked at or talked about and stated that they articulate well. It's like an aha moment when a person of color speaks well, that not only white people call that out, there are people of color that call that out. And so it's like not expected that you're going to articulate well. So when someone says to me, you articulate well, automatic offense comes up. And it's like, well, why? There's historic implications that make me feel that way. I also have to pause and say, I need to give that person a moment to share their reflections and not assume all those things, because that person might have felt something different. So what I've done in the past is when I've had that actually happen, I'll go back and say, what did you mean by that? When you said, I articulate well. And I've had moments where it's been, well, Renata, what it is you're able to navigate conversations with the skill set that I would love to have. You can talk to people no matter what their background, no matter what their experience. You make it plain, you make it clear. And I don't have that skill set. And I think you're an effective communicator. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that actually feels good. And it feels much different than you articulate well. And so once I uncover that, I couldn't validate my first emotion. My first emotion was offense. It's no longer validated. I'm no longer offended, but I can validate the fact that there still was a reason I felt that way. So now I care about the relationship. So now let me share, after hearing what you said and articulating back what you said to me and what you meant to say, you know what, that felt great. And it would have felt even better if you would have used those words. And let me explain to you why initially I had an offense to what you said. And I explained the historical reasons behind you articulate well. After explaining that, it takes them on a journey to say, I'm never saying that again in life. I get it. Or, whatever the case is. And they move forward. But there's offenses that are happening in that conversation, because maybe that person's offended that I'm even saying something. But if you have a relationship, then you can really grow. And that's really what it's about, is being transparent and having that relationship, accepting what that person is saying, telling you, hey, tell me more. And then also giving grace, because if that person is saying, this is what I intended, then you're giving grace for them to grow into that conversation in the future. Now, could it look completely different? Well, I said it because truly a lot of Black people don't articulate well. And then that would have validated what I felt. And then I would have explained to them how that is a microaggression, broke down what a microaggression is, how your bias is helping you to navigate those conversations in a way that your intention is impacting people in a negative way. And would you like to change that? And you take people on that journey. So I think it's a journey in conversation, but it's also about grace and forgiveness, the word that we don't like, but it will take a lot of that, because we have to remember our systems have taught us what we do today. Systems have taught me how I respond. History has taught me how I respond. How do we together change? How do we together have these tough conversations and actually win together?
Oh, it's so, I love, number one, I love win together. I mean, I think this is definitely, you and I use such similar words, this idea of journey and grace and forgiveness. Like those are just huge to, like North Stars for me. And there's, the things that you talked about on aggressions are definitely what's happened to me. And I've heard, other things like, oh, your skin is so beautiful. It's lighter than the others. And that is, in their mind, they see that as a compliment. And so I'll say, well, I just want you to know, like, is that a compliment? I'll actually ask, because I just want to know, is that supposed to be a compliment? Because I do need to let you know that I have an affinity to African Americans. And so I don't care, no matter what shade. And so when you say that this is prettier than the others, well, what does the others represent? And those are my brothers and sisters. I have an affinity to all humans, but just know that I have an affinity. These are humans. These are my brothers and sisters. And I need you to know that didn't sound good. So tell me what you meant. And the same thing, I would clarify, what do you exactly mean by that? Now, I know if you say it like that, that's pretty clear. If someone were to say you just have such beautiful skin, it's, I don't know, smoother, or I don't know what they would say, I would then probably clarify as well and say, oh, thank you so much. Well, what do you like about it specifically? And if they start to go into the lightness and all of that, then I would obviously have to go deeper with that. Because I do feel like my job is for what I know, I should share. What I don't know, I need to go learn myself. Where you are unknowledgeable, or in some cases ignorant, I feel like it's my job to sit with you, not in judgment, but in seeking to understand, and then helping you come, for both of us, kind of coming to the middle with understanding, so that when we leave, we're different people.
True.
We see things differently. Because I think if we're not changed by an interaction, whether, let's, for example, coworker to coworker, we're with each other and we leave each other and we feel uplifted, or we feel like, maybe their finger was on me, or they feel like someone kicked me down. Like there's some way that we're changed through an interaction with a person, and we get to choose how we are changing, how we're changing, and how others are feeling and changing through the feelings. And so what you talked about earlier, how you described that, in the process that you just took everybody through, is quite brilliant. I mean, there's so many times that these things happen, and often they're just super innocent, like just don't know. And like you said, we all have bias, so we respond based on our own history and our own lens and our own experience, and we have bias towards something. And sometimes, like you said, it's towards our own people. Because I recall being a person, interracial, a biracial person, I recall many times where people were like, well, you're not quite black enough. And over here, and it's like, well, it's obviously I'm not white. So I'm not white enough and I'm not black enough. And so what exactly am I? And so always having to have kind of sit in the middle and have kind of these discussions and these battles on both sides to say, well, I belong somewhere. I know I belong somewhere. But that would be, those things happen. I mean, they still happen. They don't happen as much as maybe they used to, but some of the stuff you're talking about with the hair, oh gosh. I mean, hair like that. People always want to touch hair, and I'm not a dog.
Right. Don't pet me, please.
Don't pet me. Don't pet me.
But one thing you said, Heather, that I definitely want to touch on in this journey, because I do look at it as a journey. And one thing that I think we equally share is, people don't understand. We all want to be respected. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, I believe everyone wants to be respected. And there is history that everyone has. I don't care who you are, what you look like, your background. And with my own personal history, being a fair-skinned woman, I've definitely experienced all those things that you're talking about. And in this moment, sometimes my own challenges are, there are people of color that are like, why are you representing? Or, what do you mean represent? I am a person of color. I have my own experiences. And yes, everyone has different experiences. I'm married to a very dark-skinned brother. He looks great. He's amazing. But he has his own experiences. He has his own challenges. And I've watched him have to deal with, profiling when we were younger, because he's 6'4" for tall, dark skin and getting pulled over just because he's a Black man driving. So I have also had to support him through tough conversations. And how do you navigate life today? And where do you go? And what does that look like? But when you say all that, sometimes it's even challenging in leading this work when you've got to fight the system. You got to fight your own people that are looking at you like you don't have a voice, and then you're still having to offer grace. So in this journey, I think it's important for us to be transparent and honest, and that's where I'm at. I'm learning to have tough conversations with my brothers and sisters when they make statements or they look down on me or say different things that are defensive or hurtful too.
Yeah. I do. I think in this moment, I mean, grace and forgiveness are huge. They're huge on all sides. I mean, I know when we say these types of words, you and I are both religious people. So in the end, people who are out there might feel uncomfortable, and I'm sorry, but that's who we are. And so we present, each and every one of us present differently in our shoes. This is kind of this idea of monolithic, like we're not all one. We both have two different experiences. We may look similar, we may talk similar, we have different experiences. The next person's going to look different or might look similar, whatever that is. And so know that we're not all the same. So here's one of the things that just drives me nuts. Here's another microaggression. And I've only heard this from white men my entire life. And it's this: oh, no problem, sister. Well, here's the thing. I know I'm not your sister because I'm the only child.
Right.
So
Right.
we're not related. But what is it that you're trying to get to by saying that?
Right.
Is it that you want to have, is it a word is it something that you're trying to get to, that you're trying to show, again, an affinity, a connection, you're trying to build relationship or rapport? That word and that phrase and that context actually does not build up, it breaks down. So it makes me immediately get defensive because I'm like,
Right.
I immediately go, sister, why do you have to talk to me that way? Because I didn't talk to you that way.
Right.
Why did you refer me that? Because we don't have a relation. You didn't hear me call you brother. You didn't hear me call me brother. You didn't hear any of that stuff. So
Right.
these are some of the things that if the more people realize, like, I just think there's a low level of awareness, and they don't realize how their words mean things, how they
Right.
impact people. And then of course the actions, I mean, the actions are over and above. So the stuff with George Floyd and all the other people before that, and unfortunately I have to say after that will come.
Right.
Those are actions that are backed up by belief systems that are backed up by, it's the system. But in the end, it starts when we think about the individual frame or the individual lens. They're
Right.
coming at it because of how they were raised, the communities they were in, the things they saw, right? And so it's up to us to help them reframe some of that knowledge and increase their awareness by saying, like people like us saying, by the way, like when you call me sister, that is not a compliment.
Right.
Here's why, and go into the reason why it isn't, and ask them if you think that, I mean, here's another way you could say that. I think what you were trying to get to is this: is that right? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, actually, I just prefer you to say, Heather or Bud or something. I don't know, whatever that is that's comfortable for you in your own shoes.
Right. And I think that's, that's where I'll give grace to. Because I mean, one thing, when you say sister, I hear girl, like at a restaurant, like before COVID, we'd go to restaurants. Hey, girl, what do you want, girl? And it's like, what are you saying? Like, I mean, do you go to every table and say girl? And it's like, what I understand, and this is where I say, I hear what you're saying. I understand the intent, right? The intent was to build a relationship, and you assumed that this was the language that I use. And so therefore you're going to meet me where you think I am. And so it's kind of having that conversation. Hey man, don't call me girl, but I get it. Like, I'm very like playful and funny.
Me too.
So I'll be like, oh girl, oh, so you calling me girl because I'm Black? I've said that, to people, and then they turn red and they're laughing. That's not what I meant. No, I know that's not what you meant. What you're trying to do is build a relationship. But just know, by approaching me that way, you're assuming that's the way I want to communicate with you, when it's not. So be careful when you're trying to build relationships, and figure out, how do you approach people and just be people, and not approach me because you see that I'm a Black woman sitting at the table and you believe that this is going to create space for us to have this great conversation and go from there. So it does happen, but I also realize the intent behind it. And so you're trying to meet in the middle, because you got this great person that's really trying to be all bubbly and friendly, and you're like, girl, and I'm like, wow.
It's like when you hear it, it's like, oh, it's like nails on a chalkboard. And I always try to respond with like understanding that positive intent, knowing that the person's trying to come at it in their way and trying to relate in their way. And it is a sad state that's how they feel like they have to relate. And again, but it is related to the journey, the filter, the lens, the experience, just what they know. And so for me, I want to take it always as an opportunity, instead of like getting in an argument or showing that I'm right. The
Right.
opportunity is to educate and to inform. And I feel like if we all just took on that responsibility a lot more on both sides, even if you aren't Black and you know that's the wrong way for someone to refer to one of your friends or your coworkers, it's still incumbent upon you to be the voice for others when you're hearing like, oh, that's not how I already learned. I learned early on either because my hand was slapped that I
Right.
said that to someone, they told me, or I've learned recently some new training, some new books, some new videos, and so pass that along because that knowledge is only as good as what you can do to pass to the next person, right?
And you just said something that I will tell you can be a tension, and it's the truth, right? We do have to take the initiative to help grow people and share and reflect, and vice versa. People, if we're saying something, help me along. I'm not perfect, you know. If there's something today, this is what I believe, but tomorrow I might grow to believe something else because wisdom comes with age. And as I'm growing, I'm learning, and learning never stops. So in that journey, I'm okay with being open to shift, change, perspective. But I think that's the key, right? Are you willing to shift
Mm,
your perspective? Are
mm,
you willing to grow? Are you willing to learn? Or are you just going to shut the voice down? And so what I've experienced is
mm.
people not wanting to hear the voice, or they don't want to learn, they don't want to grow, or it's always on the person of color to speak up. What you just said that I want to hone into is if you are a white person and you are an ally and you are taking this journey, it would be very helpful for you to share what you know with your peers, with your friends, with people that you work with. So it's not always on the person of color to have to call into conversation everything, which goes to choosing your battles. I'm not going to choose every battle because Heather, if I did, I wouldn't have a job ever, like ever.
Mhm.
If I chose every battle, it's just not worth it. So picking and choosing what conversations you're going to have, picking and choosing where you want to build a relationship, because there's some people that I'm just going to say are straight up ignorant. When you come to me and say that they're handing out doctoral degrees, you're one person I'm choosing not to build a relationship with.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
what you're choosing to do is discredit my work. And I'm not going to have to stop and pause and explain what I went through to get to where I am today because you're not worth it.
Yeah.
So that's one battle that I won't fight. So you do have to pick and choose it, but it would
Yeah.
be helpful if we have a lot more people step up and speak up and it not just be the people of color having to be oppressed over and over again.
Oh, you brought up a really good one. This idea of mad Black woman. And this is something that we have in our own head. So there's a stereotype that, Black women are angry and can't control their emotions. Okay. And so with us, when we're just people, we're human, and that we could be in a situation where we decide we want to express a counter view. Now we want to say we don't agree with that, or that's just doesn't seem right or just or whatever. But in so many times we hold ourselves back from presenting a view that probably needs to be heard for fear of that interpretation of that perception, and maybe even being shot down for it, and maybe even some comments around it in that regard. And so it's a hard one. Most people don't understand that. I remember one time I was sitting around a table, I was working in an organization, and I was representing the customer. So I was in customer experience, and I was representing this high level customer, and I brought back a set of feedback and requests to this cross functional team. None of them look like me, of course, at the table. In most cases, they don't.
Right.
And I bring it back, and I'm sitting there, with poise, and I present it, and they're like mad, and they're laughing, and they're angry, and they're just all these things they're doing, emotions about what this customer's request was, and I was baffled, and I'm gonna be honest, I was pissed.
Right.
I was pissed because the customer was not at the table, and so I represented that customer at the table, and that
Mhm.
customer brought in over $1 million worth of revenue every year, and I thought, "How dare you, say what you're saying, act what you're acting, and be so kind of nonchalant about this customer's really important feedback." And I wanted
Mhm.
to kind of say, do that way, but I felt it like bubble up, and I could feel myself getting angry, and I didn't want to be that. I didn't, in my mind, I was like, I am not going to come off as that stereotype. So I stood there. So what happened is the person that was there that reported to me said, Heather, are you not irritated by this feedback? What's going on? What's going on in your head? Are you not, frustrated? And I said, kind of like I am right now.
Right.
Well, I see your point. But this is a big customer, and they're not at the table right now. And
Mhm.
I tried not to be super angry, but at the same time, I had to say, like, someone has to represent that voice. But I chose to kind of stay more poised and not over, I wasn't trying to feed into, I know what the stereotype is. But then it's hard again because we're not bringing good stuff to the table when we hold back sometimes.
No, and that's true. And I can tell you, sitting at the table, there are times that I have been angry, frustrated. And what I'm learning to do is just share that in the moment. And so there was a conversation we had that was pretty heated around COVID-19 and like, what do we do? I won't go into the details of what the story was and what the conversation was, but I will go into where I stood. And I said, well, in this moment, I'm frustrated and my emotions are high. I have lost loved ones to COVID. And what you're asking is putting me in a position to where my emotions are going to cause me to respond in a way I probably should not. So what I'm going to choose to do is not respond in this moment, but let you know I just don't agree with us navigating forward. And so I
Mhm.
felt really empowered in that moment to do that. But I understand what you're saying, Heather, because if I would have responded in anger in that moment and said everything, oh, Renata is mad and, oh, Black girl's angry, this, and that.
Yeah.
I've actually watched my peers hang up on each other, go off, say different things, and it's never looked at like that. It's like, oh, they're having an emotional day, or, oh, it's always excused. But as a Black person, we already know we're not going to get that same grace. So we have to
Right.
learn to navigate our emotions a lot differently and
Mm.
pause in the moment,
Yep.
reflect, and then respond. And if you can't respond well in that moment, then you come back and have the conversation. And trust me, I will come back and have this conversation post-COVID. But in this moment, I still can't have the conversation because there's still anger and hurt around that conversation.
Yes, and I remember you like when I had to respond to her, I held back. They knew kind of where I stood. I wanted to make it be clear that they knew where I stood. And then I just stopped it at that. Like because I felt like if I were to kind of get in there, it would just be because it happened one other time where I was the calm one and people were like, "How are you so calm in these meetings?" Well, I choose
Right.
to be have control over my emotional self-management, right? That's the emotional intelligence side. And I am not going to get involved inside of this heavy conflict and to be honest, highly emotional, non-fact driven type of place. Now, I'm an emotional person. I mean,
Right.
everything I do and the work I do is about creating positive emotions in people and not creating negative emotions, right? But when it comes to
Right.
achieving things or presenting things to people, I know that it has to come from a place of it depends on who it is. So if it's executive leadership team, for example, there'll be a little emotion in there and some storytelling, but mostly it's going to be factual. And I know based on my audience how to do that, right? And then I think it's important for us to know who the audience is and how we can come at them when we're dealing with on these difficult topics.
Right.
But in those situations, I just like, well, I'm choosing not to get involved. I'm choosing not to get riled up. Now, like you said, after the fact, I've had to go back to one of my coworkers, one of my team members, or to my manager and say, I just want to let you know what was happening right here. I was baffled. I was
Right.
really sad or like I was disappointed in how you responded and got involved in this situation or whatever it was. I may say that depending on who it is I'm talking to, right? And I've had to do that before. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I think I believe this to the core. We are our brother's keeper. We
Hmm.
are. So I
Right.
am responsible for you and you are for me. And so if you see me going down the road that's immoral, words that I'm saying that are not fair or treating someone wrong, like in a respectful way, one that's showing love, care, and concern, like you got to come to me.
Hmm.
And I want you to know I'm going to come to you because I'm here to help lift you up and help you grow. Right.
And have that conversation, but just don't call you sister in the process.
Please don't. Don't call me sister.
No,
Let's see. Don't call. I'm just trying to think. Like,
sister.
don't say I articulate well. Please don't ask to touch my hair. I'm trying to. There's so many that you forget. You really
Right.
forget about what they come at you, and you're just like, and like, yeah, the girl thing. I don't
Mhm.
even like when someone calls me sweetie when they're like, "Well, sweetie," and that's not even racial. That's just like,
No, that's cultural. And it's actually where you're from and the
I'm not too.
background. So what you did say though, I think is huge, Heather. So you're talking about like still having tough conversations, but it's also where you're having those conversations. So I believe it's important to praise in public and punish in private. And I'm not saying tough
Mhm.
conversations are punishment, so don't take that. But I think that's really important if you're having a tough conversation. It's not the platform to have this conversation where the harm might have been done in front of a group. I think the maturity comes from you pulling that person to the side and having that conversation, which is why I think it's important to build relationships, right? And you go in from the I. What I heard you say is I. And that's the most important piece of having a tough conversation, is sharing the I perspective, not let me tell you what you did when you did this, this, and that. You know, what I heard and what I felt and what happened when you might have made this statement and the impact to me was. And so using that language, I think, is important in tough conversations, and making sure you're having those one-on-one conversations, not in a group where you're like, because I think that's calling a person out. And somebody on my team always says calling people in. And I love that. So I do believe it's important to call people into a conversation versus calling people out in a conversation. So I think those are important ways to navigate those tough conversations as well.
Well, the other thing that you just made me think about, when I go back to one of those scenarios where I sat in the room feeling offended for the customer, not for me, but for the customer. I'm standing in their shoes as I'm sitting at the table, right? And I remember after the meeting, someone asked, multiple people saying, "I don't know how you kept your cool," whatever. And I think it's because I have a foundational belief that others are going to have to take the lower ground. I will always go high, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they want to show up in a certain way, you're in a meeting and it's a tough conversation and things are going off the rails and people are showing the sides of them that is not so pretty. And we can't all be perfect and we can't always show our pretty side. I get it, right? But that's what's happening. You do not have to jump in the mix. You give yourself permission to say, I am choosing not to get in that mix. I'm choosing to take that higher ground. And that's what I do. So I think when I get in those situations, even though I can feel it in my belly, it starts to rise up through the chest. And it's like right at the tip of my throat. I want to be like, just start going. I don't. And I think it's because of that North Star. I have the North Star is, I want to take the higher ground. You can go low. I'm staying high. We'll go, and I'll still stay high even when I come after the fact and have to talk to you in your own office. I'm still going to stay high. I'm going to show respect, love, care, and concern as I'm actually talking to you about something, about a self-correction or something that I saw, something that just was unlike you. And I found that when I'm able to, if I see a coworker or a team member or somebody going off course or really acting incongruent to who I know they are and what I know they can be, then I don't have an issue with, going after the point and after the fact and kind of letting them know that, but it's because what you talked about earlier, you and I we started this way. It's about relationships. And if we have a strong relationship from the start, we did all that hard work to build that trust up. When we come to them to be able to help them self-correct, to help them see a different way of what they're doing right now, to help them see a better path, they are more receptive to this because they know that we care for them. They know it. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm trying to get over something. I'm trying to look better than you. I'm trying to get a promotion. I'm trying to, there's all these things that we could say that we're trying to do. It's not that. And they know that because you've always stood there by their side.
Right. And I love the word choice. When you just said it's a choice to have the conversation. It's a choice to care. And if I'm presenting a conversation to you and say, Heather, I'm choosing to have this conversation with you because I do care. And because I do care about a relationship, and because there was something that happened and I want to understand what your intention was, because I know my impact might have been different. So please, I want to give you the opportunity to share. That's respect. And then that's caring. And then that's love. And that's all those things that are necessary for us to grow together. But if we don't do that and we walk in the room and we're, choosing to you did this, you did that, and, this attitude, offense is already up. People don't even want to hear what else you have to say when you attack them versus when you come to them and you share. So you brought up something earlier, and we haven't really talked about COVID, and we haven't really talked about the impacts where people are having to, work at home and, to create that social distancing. And then there's this tension, right, that comes when people are like, well, we've got to create another level of accountability. And I'm the HR, so you can call me the HR police, right? You're the police, you're HR. And so people always feel like, they're going to come police me. And why are you putting a policy together? Well, the policy is not for those that follow the rules, first of all. Let's just put that out there. The policy are for rule breakers, but we have to have policy because as an organization, it's a system, right? And I'm not saying every system has all the right policies in place, but we do have to have policies and procedures in place, because if you get hurt at home and you have workers' comp, there's all these layers that go to what we're going through right now. And I can tell you that people have been offended. Wait a minute, you're going to, have to track, things now. And why are you asking me to tell you what I'm doing, throughout the day? And all those conversations have happened. And what we've guided our leaders to is have an open conversation and bring them into the conversation and say, you are now at home. And now we have to figure out, what we're monitoring. We have grants. We have all these things that are attached to what you do, how many interactions you have. Can you help me to figure out what the measurement should be?
Mm.
That's completely different than going and saying, I expect you to do XYZ. I expect you to do this, because first of all, you don't do that work. So let's just take that out the conversation. As an executive, we're strategists. So we're like working. We don't ever, let me just say that this in the moment, we don't ever get a break. So we don't get to go to work, do our job, go home and shut down for the day. We
Yeah.
are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And our brain is consistently working on, how do we, keep the business open? How do we keep doing this? Because we do care, and we are executives, and we want to make sure that everyone keeps their job during COVID-19. So I just want to call that out in the moment, which has been attention. And, we are working around the clock emotionally to figure this out, but we're not going to always get it right either. And giving grace for that, but being honest as an executive and saying, we are trying to figure this out. Can we get your help? That brings that inclusion in, which I think is also missed sometimes, because people exclude those key stakeholders from conversations. If I'm going to come in and tell my team, and I'm going to talk just about Renata's team, because I have the bombdiggity.com team. I love it. When I go to my team, I don't go directing. I go asking and sharing, and we come together collaboratively to discover what the next steps are. Now, there are times in leadership that you're going to have to come out and you're going to have to tell people this is what's expected, right? There's directive leadership that will take place. But for the most part, you can avoid ever having tough conversations with your team if you include them in the conversations up front and have collaborative conversations. So when I think about COVID and I think about all that and those tough conversations, to say, oh, Heather, I know you've been kind of just doing your thing and you've never had any kind of standards or any kind of way for us to measure, because we can see you and we can see what you're doing, but now you're behind, the scenes and you're working, and we've got to figure out how to measure what you're doing. And it's not because we don't trust you. It's because we have to do it for these reasons. When people understand the why, then people are willing to jump in and help you. But it's that why factor that gets missed all the time. People don't understand.
It really is. I'm curious to know, Mary, hello there, and LaTanya and Toddy. Trying to see who else is here. Those are the only three I see that have commented. Do you have anything to add to this? Is there, have you had any challenges in this space of having tough conversations, or have you had a tough conversation? Someone's tried to have one with you and just completely messed it up. I'm just curious to know if there's any feedback, any other insights, any questions that you might have around this. I want to make sure that you get the most out of this time too, since, in the next few minutes, we'll probably wrap up, but I just want to make sure you get more out of this as well. The other thing I want to go back to, this idea of microaggressions. I have to, because I wanted to say it and then it just came back in my head. And it is that I bet you the people on here already know, that are sitting here right now, but let's just, again, in the ally space, let's spread this about. And it is what you hear Black people say to each other is not okay for you to say to them. It's just not. So we may even say, oh, girl or sister, or we may say, there's so many words. There's some words that aren't so nice that also you'll hear often African-American men say to each other. It's just not okay. It's not okay. And so I think that knowing that and telling people I heard you say that, you can pull them aside. You don't say it. You can I just heard you say that and that. You don't say that. That's like a no, you don't, I know you may hear this person to this person say it, but you can't say it. Because it's not going to come off the same. So choose different words, ask them. And so I wanted to say that because I do think in this conversation related to in issues at work related to race, when we bring people in, when we are completely transparent, when they are transparent, we're open to learning, when we don't take offense, and even when we create a safe space where we have some kind of foundational ground rules, but that if there's something that we say even in that open conversation that might seem offensive to someone, that they have a code word or something that they can say, that they know, oops, everything stops until we kind of move past whatever it was that offended that person. Is a good thing to have. I think it's a good practice. So ouch could be one of those words. But somebody can say ouch, and then immediately everything stops. And it's uh-oh, what was it that just offended you? And sometimes it could be, be honest. Sometimes it could be, we could just be hypersensitive. We could be reading into things, but no matter what, we still have to get it out in the open and make sure we are able to clarify what we heard. You were able to clarify what you said and why you were saying it, and maybe choosing a different way to say it, right? But it's bringing everybody to the table and opening it up and opening our hearts, minds, and just being open, like you were saying, to change our thinking and the way we show up.
Right. Yeah. You asked a lot of questions before that. So I'm not sure I want to rewind, because you were sharing such a great example of the conversations. And I love that you went back to the microaggressions. But what actual question did you have for me? I want to make sure I don't.
Well, those questions were all for Mary and well, both Marys, the Mary, Latanya, the Toddy, people who are out there, I know who are watching and listening right now. If you had anything to add, anything about your experience or some question you had, some nuance to what we're talking about, I don't want it to just be about us. Usually people are asking questions, so it helps to be, interactive and feel like it's all of us in it together versus just Dr. Robinson and I chatting, which is fine because to be honest, I really like her. And she and I are going to be doing more and more together. And I think that there's a lot of power in our perspectives and in our presence and our desire to have grace and forgiveness. So, hey, Stephen, how are you? Glad you're there. Another person that's from the Leadership of the Heart podcast. So it's nice to see that community coming out. But yeah, it's knowing that, and I want to do more, even more of these things. It doesn't really what the shade of your skin is. In this case, we both have we have that similar presence, similar background. We have a similar focus in the way we walk about. But there are plenty of other people that I've had on here who do not have that, and I'm okay with that. I want to have that conversation the same as I do with you because I want people to hear the different perspectives and how we can relate to one another out of a love, care, and concern. And I keep saying that because I think it's so important that we all start from that place. And when we start from that place, all the other things flow from there. Because if we start from hate and ignorance and all the kind of some of the opposites of that thing and self-centeredness, and as we talked about earlier, if it's about winning, then we're going to get nowhere. We're going to improve nothing at all.
Right. Yeah, and as I reflect on this journey for me personally, what some suggestions I would give to viewers or people that are listening is it starts kind of like within your own team. Obviously, individually, we have to figure out having tough conversations. But if you have an agenda, you have ground rules, you have a leader that says, hey, Heather, everybody at this table, like, what would you like to see on the agenda? Perhaps you can add, I've seen in an organization that uses actual cards that says ouch. And so part of their team meeting is if they're having a meeting and something is said, they throw the card up and it just says ouch. So people recognize there's an ouch in the room, and then they go back and they have a conversation around that ouch. And that person that was offended talks to that individual about that ouch. They come back and they share openly so that ouch doesn't occur again. So I think there's ways that you can navigate it through systems that already are in place. So we talk about systems all the time and how systems are, and I'm not going to call them broken because they're set up to do what they're doing and they're doing really well at what they do. And that's not what we want them to do. So we want to but what you can do is use the system to help navigate change. And so people love agendas. People love structure. People love, oh, we're going to talk about this and this is what the agenda is. So start there in your teams. I want to be able to call, things into conversations that perhaps offend me. And how do we navigate these conversations and create a space where we all really do care about each other's journey? Because we all have different journeys. I mean, yes, you're an African-American woman, so am I, but our journeys are different. My offense is going to be different than your offense. We might talk about it, but I'm going to respect your journey and you're going to respect mine. But how do we all respect each other in that room and in that space? So I think that's important to create. And those are tough conversations. I mean, ultimately things will happen. Things will be said. Offenses will take place, but it's not the offense. It's what you do with the offense. Actually, that's growth. And so when people talk about tough conversations, what I love about them is it grows you. So like in my personal relationship, I've been married 20 some years and it has not always been easy. I love him dearly, but I'm going to tell you when the real change comes is whenever we have real, true, transparent, tough conversations. And you have to remember, we all have our own bias. We all have been taught different things by the system. And now we have to unlearn some of those things and be willing to unlearn. And so that's the challenge, right? Are you really willing to unlearn some of your perspectives and shift and grow? So that starts with you individually. We can talk about everyone else, but the reality is the change starts with us individually. Are we willing to grow? Are we willing to change our perspective? Are we willing to help bring people into perspectives that may be skewed because of the system? And that way we can grow together. I say that a lot because it really is about growing together.
It is. And it's about us and our individual shoes and the role and the responsibility that we take. And just for anybody who's out there watching right now, I'm just super excited because Dr. Robinson and I are going to be, working more together, partnering in this space of helping to expand understanding on topics of race, but I think more even on topics of self-awareness, on communication, but also just on collaborating in diverse spaces. So we're going to be doing some work together. And if anybody out there needs help with this or is interested, either facilitated sessions or training, don't forget that she and I are going to be available for that. I did see a question that came in, so I'm going to show that on the screen right now. Toddy says my spouse and I were talking last night and commented that we both feel that there's very few people that understand the term that the media uses a lot now, which is systemic racism. How do you think we can change that and make people aware that racism has become intrinsic in our culture? I think that's part of the issue at hand. So how do you think we can change that? What are your thoughts on that?
Tati, a great question. I think first, the first way to change it is get people to even understand what that means, right? So people don't understand. They hear this word and it's a buzzword, like Black Lives Movement. All these are buzzwords, but we first have to educate ourselves. And so that change comes from educating people on what systemic racism is. So right now with COVID, we already recognize how many people of color are dying. Several people of color. That's systemic racism that goes all the way back to healthcare. When you look at healthcare, and I'm going to have to say this quick because we have 10 minutes, but I want to break down what systemic racism is because I think that's the important part. So our healthcare system has systems that are embedded. I just spoke to a lady the other day and they were talking about how they number you when you walk in. Like, okay, are you high, low, medium to serve you? These are things that go on behind the scenes that people are not aware of. Not in my organization, but there are organizations that operate that way. So if you're a movie star and you walk in, all of a sudden you move up to high and we're going to serve you. Well, if you're an African American, you just got shot, sometimes you're still laying in the emergency room and they're servicing other patients. And guess what? You don't get the service you need. In healthcare, Black women are dying way more often giving birth to children than white women. Why is that? It's systemic because they're servicing white women, giving the service that they need, where Black women are not. They're looked at as strong. You don't need shots. You don't need this. You don't need that. And they're not getting the same access. The word is access. When you talk about educational systems, it depends on where you live. There's redlining. So there's something that's called redlining where you're actually, if you go to get a house, where my parents are military, we came to Colorado, they actually had a realtor that would only show them certain areas of where they could live. And these areas were areas that are redlined, where they don't give you access to loans and opportunity to grow. In your education system, you have old books, you don't have educational opportunities that you would have in different areas. So because we understood that, we're military, we understood what they were trying to do and chose to live in a different community, create access for our children in an educational lens. When you think about education, they teach you what they want you to know, not what everything that has happened. So think about Columbus Day. We celebrate Columbus Day. Columbus Day. Why are we celebrating Columbus? Can anyone explain to me why we're celebrating Columbus Day? He stole the country. I'm like, and we're celebrating this. I can get into a whole lot of stuff, but that's systemic. So the education system is breaking down things, teaching you what it wants you to know. And so there's that bias. Then when you talk about television and you're watching TV, and if you're watching a program that may be an African-American program, I love Blackish, all of a sudden you see commercials, you see Popeye's chicken, you see all these things to eat that are not healthy things. So therefore, you're choosing, because your mental is telling you, I want to eat this, and you're choosing to eat things that you shouldn't eat. And so then obviously your health is going to be impacted. So those are kind of the areas of systemic racism, which is in education, which is in healthcare, which is in our justice system. You think about people going to jail, they robbed a convenience store, but somebody shot and killed a Black woman and they got out in 2 years. So our justice system is set up. That's systemic racism. And you can't change it all overnight. So you have to pick and choose where you're going to start. For me personally, I'm working with the police department right now in one area, and we're talking about systemic issues, and I'm helping to navigate that. But this is where people first have to understand what it is and then choose their journey. I can't choose it all. I can't choose to work in education, healthcare here and there. I can only choose because I'm one person and we're all humans. So choose where you want to drive into the community and talk about this and bring access and create access to where people are having the same educational opportunity, where they're not taking tests that are set up for other people of color to fail, and where white people continue to grow. Because right now it's like the track. If you tell me let's run a mile, white people in front of me have already ran 2 laps and I'm still trying to catch up. That's issues.
Yeah, that's profound. Now, Toddy did say she wanted to clarify. Her intention was she wanted to find out, basically, as a person, not a person of color, how can she be an agent of change to influence how we unlearn? And so, yeah, I think a big part of that, you kind of talked about it, which is, the more you know, please pass it along. Like, that the paying it forward idea in the allyship side is making sure that you share with all of your other friends that look like you what it is you're learning, what it is if you've had experiences where you got slapped on your hand, and I'm saying that, where you realize you were wrong because someone maybe helped you understand that, then you go about talking to as many people as you can about that. Also share positive experiences that you have with people of color, because oftentimes what happens is people are jaded by experiences that may have been negative that then fulfill or perpetuate the stereotype that they may have in their head. And if the more that you are sharing positive experiences, the more then it helps them. So they get their own experiences, they're hearing from other people. And so it's kind of building up in their heads and making them realize, oh, well, maybe I should start learning more about these people instead of making assumptions about these people. What about you, Dr.
I
Robinson?
agree, Heather. That is exactly what I was saying. It's really about educating other people and taking that journey. And so if you want to dive in and you want to be a person that's an ally that's in the community, that's one way. But if you want to just start on your own Facebook page and you see someone posted something that and you know that is like not right and that's wrong perspective, then calling that person into a conversation, which I've been doing with my friends, black, white, yellow, green, it doesn't matter. I'm having lots of conversations because not everybody understands this journey, but have those conversations. And that right there is allyship. And so it can start right there. If you know someone, they say something or do something. I heard a story. There's two girls, they're best friends. One's black, one's white. And when she was younger, the white girl was interested in black guys. And her grandfather was like, you don't need to talk to him. This is wrong. What's wrong with you? It needs to stay in our own community, our own culture. And she stood up to him and she said, that is racist behavior. I'm not calling you a racist, but that's racist behavior, Grandpa. And I can talk to who I want to, because this is, 1990, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do what I want to do. Well, it took him years. So on his deathbed, he says to her, I appreciate you calling me out because you taught me something about loving people for who they are and not the color of their skin. So it took her years, but he came back and he said that. So you don't know what seed or nugget you're planting by having these tough conversations. It may take time. Some people say, well, I'm not going to have a conversation. It's not worth it. I said that earlier about certain things. And that's not necessarily the way you want to do it. But I do think it's important to have conversations when they're necessary. But when you're at work, you do have to pick and choose your battles because that's your bread and butter and that's connected to your money. But when you're at home, I do think you want to have those conversations. And that's what's really important. If we have these conversations at home, that's going to come into the workplace because then people are people, whether they're at home and they're at work, and then they can come in and navigate those conversations.
I love that. And I mean, this idea of the workplace, I think we need to have it. And if we can have environments, here's one thing I was thinking about earlier. If HR can create environments where they facilitate the discussions around this so that it is in more of a controlled environment and they can moderate when they see things going off track. And I know in a lot of cases, HR is not always armed with the right words, the right ways, and how to facilitate that. And so that's kind of a whole nother track that you and I will be looking at going down to try to prepare them to have the discussions. But that redesign of the processes, the systems inside the workplace that promote certain people over others, that hire certain people over others, that exclude people out of lunch meetings, golf games, all those things out of others. And so it's a redesign of the system even inside of workplaces. So this is good stuff. I see Toddy saying that she's a writer and her son's a filmmaker, and they've been doing a lot of research about how racism, how it's embedded in laws and in wealth and property and things like that, and that there's some real eye-opening cases. You know what? I'm going to be honest. I have also been. She said she's a Colorado native as well, living back in New England for the second time, but I've had amazing experiences to share. I feel inspired to write about some of those. When I think about now I went totally off track because I'm just like so enthralled in all this conversation she's giving. Thank you for actually interacting in there. When people actually do that, I get off track.
Right.
I forgot what I was saying now. So you can start talking about something else, but Toddy, I appreciate you sharing all that.
I was gonna say, I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate, you doing the work. And I think that's what I would say is that it's important for us to own it. And when people are saying, I want to create access, I want to be an ally, well, the work starts with you individually and you choosing it. So thank you. I want to say thank you to you. And I'm hoping that rubs off on many other people, because if we all choose this work and we all choose to educate ourselves and then go out and be part of the change, then we really can change together.
And choice is a huge part of you. Probably can't see it, but behind me, I have inspiring intentional leadership. And it is for me all about choice. Everything I want to be is about intention, and intention's about making the right choices or not. So, for
Right.
example, I'm trying to lose a little weight because I put on the COVID-5, and I ate some peanut M&Ms yesterday, and I had committed I wasn't going to have sugar Monday through Friday-ish, and maybe only once or twice a week. And I was going to have, and I had some peanut M&Ms yesterday, another week. That was a choice I made, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to pay the price for that. I have to stick with it and live with that, whatever that is. And I can choose to get back on track. So I
Right.
think one of my final messages would be, and then I can let you get your final message in, is that that there's no better time than today to be an ally, to make a change in our behavior, to be more open and respectful and receptive to people's conversations to you in these tough conversation topics. So today is the day. Don't look back to yesterday. I'm not looking at those M&Ms. I'm not having them today. It's today. It starts today. So that's
Yeah.
my message. What about you, Dr. Robinson?
My message would be around choice. You can choose to be part of progress, the solution, and coming together and shifting and navigating those systems. Or you can choose to say, I'm going to turn my head and I'm going to be blind and I'm going to keep living the way I live. It really is your choice. I would say, I hope you choose to be a part of the change. I hope you choose to have tough conversations, and I hope you choose to take the time it takes to educate yourself, because the system's not going to teach you that. You have to do your own homework. So I hope you choose to do your homework and be a part of the change.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. Once again, this will not be the last time I'm sure we'll doing these things.
Yeah.
It's been amazing. Thank you for everybody who's joined today. I will put the link will come out shortly. And when it does, I'll post it everywhere and you can share it with friends and hopefully you will to get the message out. But this has been wonderful. I appreciate it. Thanks for being a
Absolutely.
guest.